Hello, Claire. I think you're muted, which is lovely. I can do an English accent. Would you
Sorry,
guys like me to? Oh, no, well, there she
my
is.
computer just completely froze. I couldn't touch anything. I think Jessica's just done that on purpose. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody watching on YouTube. Hi, everybody watching on Zoom. It's so nice to have you here. We are delighted. Well, we are delighted to have all these lovely storytellers. It's just a very sad occasion that we've all come together. So we do thank you for coming, and we hopefully you'll be able to give generously to the various different charities that are supporting the efforts for Hurricane Helene. So just a few technical and housekeeping things before I pass it over to Linda. If you can please stay muted throughout the show, even at the end of each storyteller, we're going to do silent clapping and waving like we've got used to. And then at the very end, you can all unmute, and then we will have a little bit of chat if everyone can be responsible at the end, so that we don't talk over everybody. So we're not going to have an intermission because we think you can take care of yourselves during the show. The YouTube link will remain up for a month, so anything you miss, you can go back and rewatch the whole show for a whole month. And we're putting that in the chat as well, but it's on social media. So with that, I think I'm going to pass that on to Linda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Schuyler Ford, the former president of Florida Storytelling Association and currently serving as one of the outreach coordinators for Northeast Storytelling. I live in Tallahassee and so am doubly grateful for you being here today, both storytellers and listeners, because I've seen the destruction firsthand and it is unthinkable. This all started with one phone call, and in a matter of days, we were all together, and Jessica can tell you more about that, but I thank you all for being here.
And Claire, the one thing you forgot to do, which I can't believe I'm saying this, but is to introduce yourself. Would you like to do that now?
Oh, I'm sorry. And also, we are recording, so just so everyone knows that. Yeah, my name is Claire Hennessy. I'm the co-founder and co-producer of 6 Feet Apart Productions. I'm a storyteller myself, and I used to do a podcast. You can go back and listen to that. And I'm on the committee for organising and bringing back the Bay Area Storytelling Festival, which will happen in June of 2025.
Good job.
Thank you, Jess.
And I'm Jessica Robinson. I'm the executive director of Better Said Than Done. We're a nonprofit now. It's very official sounding. And Better Said Than Done, in addition to regular shows online and in person, also produces the Women's Storytelling Festival. I am also a storyteller and an author, and I am really honored that you all chose to spend your Sunday afternoon with us here. I'm not going to go into this a lot, but yeah, basically Linda reached out to me and said, I want to do something. And I said, I want to do something too. And I know Claire wants to do something, and this was just what we know how to do. So that's why we invited you, and we're so glad that you're here. For those of you watching at home or wherever you're watching from, and for those of you who are here with us sharing your stories. Thank you so much. And without further ado, we want to get on with the storytelling. So our first storyteller of the afternoon is a dear friend of mine who I met for the first time in 2018 in Jonesboro. I actually met her alter ego, Clementine, but I got to know Anne as well, and that turned out to be almost as good. And Anne was supposed to be in Jonesboro as a featured teller again this weekend. So, but we are so glad that she is here with us today. Welcome, Anne Rutherford.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate everything that went into putting this on. It feels so good in my heart and soul to be with you all. I'm going to tell a story that I wrote some years ago. It's one of my favorites, and it's about resilience. It's called The Habit of Joy. When Joy Stevens found herself sobbing in the cereal aisle of the grocery store, she knew something had to change. She'd had to work late, she was exhausted, and they have moved the cereals again. Where is my box? They changed it? Why can't I ever find what I need? Burst into tears. Oh, gotta get out of here. She was halfway to the door when she thought, oh, my prescription. Lined up at the pharmacy. turned her head to the bulletin board so people couldn't see she was crying, was stuffed with notices, garage sales, guitar lessons, dog walkers. There was a little business card on the edge of the board. It was almost falling off. She reached out to straighten it up and it came off in her hand. Change your habits, change your life. And a woman's name, Margaret, 7 to 8 p.m. with a phone number. Change your habits. Oh, Stevens? Yeah, that's me. Thanks. When she got home, she was unpacking the prescription and the business card fell out. It had gotten tangled up with the packaging. Change your habits, change your life. 7 to 8 p.m. It was 7:42. Why not? Hello? Hi. Hi. Can I speak to Margaret, please? Speaking. Hi, Margaret. This is Joy Stevens, and I'm calling about the change your habits. Yeah, what do you want to change? Well, really, I have a lot to be grateful for. I mean, I have a job and a nice apartment. Yeah, then what are you calling me for? Well, Margaret, I'm calling you because my last birthday, I turned the age my mother was when she died. And I feel like my life is just going by without me living it. Yeah, all right, I get the picture. Okay, here's how this works. You're going to change 3 things about your life, and your life will change. What 3 things? You're going to tell me. What's something you've always wanted to do and never done? Oh, try it. Don't think, just answer. Dance. Margaret, I always have. Even as a little girl. Yeah, okay. Next thing. What's one thing that makes you uncomfortable about yourself? My weight. All right, good. What's one thing you use every day that you hate? My hair dryer. Good. Pick one of those things. Change it. Call me back. Click. What? Hello? Margaret? What? What? Change how? What? Should these people have licenses or something? That night, Joy dreamed she was back in the supermarket, but this time the shelves stretched all the way up to the sky. And when she tried to pick a box off the shelf, all the letters blurred and she couldn't read them. She woke up with a headache, in a bad mood, took a shower, fired up her hairdryer. It was a hand-me-down. It worked, except it shorted out, so you had to jam the cord back into the handle to get it going again. You threw it out in the hall? Yes! Margaret, it broke into a million pieces. It was so great. I got a new one, a diffuser. I think my hair looks really good. Yeah, you're doing good. Okay. That next thing makes you uncomfortable about yourself? Yeah, my weight. Listen, Margaret, yeah, change it. Call me back. Click. What? Hello, Margaret? What? Ugh. Infuriating woman. Joy was still steaming the next day when she walked into work. Change it. Call me back. Just change global warming. Call me back. She walked up to the barista. Hi, yeah, double mocha and muffin. Change it. Just change it. Did you want change? The barista said. Oh, no. No, I don't need any change. Stop the drink. Okay, I mean, I'll pay for it, but give me just a latte. Give me a latte with not skim. 2%. Yes, 2%. Thank you. And I'll have this banana. And that's how it started. She decided she'd only eat when she was hungry. It was amazing how long it took to figure out when that was. She realized she hadn't really listened to her body in a very long time. But when she did, it had a lot to say. What it wanted to eat, when it wanted to eat, when it wanted to move, how it wanted to move. I'm telling you, Margaret, it's amazing. I feel so like, I don't know, in myself, like I can just really, I don't know, I'm feeling really strong. Yeah, you're doing good. Are you okay? Yeah, I got a cold. Okay. Remember that last thing you always wanted to do? Yeah, dance. I know, Margaret, I know. Just do it. Yeah, call me back. Click. Right, I'll call you back, Margaret. Right before I go on stage at the Bolshoi. Well, work was really crazy that week, so it took until the next week that Joy could stop by at the community rec center on her way home. She was pretty sure they had dance classes, but I had no idea. Good grief, hip hop, pole dancing. Oh, belly dancing. She thought, hey, I've got the basic equipment. A class was meeting right then. They let her look in the window, and the room was full of people, all different, all genders, all colors, all weights, but everybody was fantastically accessorized. And the teacher put up her arms, did a little shimmy, and then everybody shimmied. It would look like a blast. Joy signed up on the spot. They gave her a link to the Spotify playlist. Class was going to start next week. She went home. Wow, this is so cool. She took off her coat, just hit the first song on the list to see what it would sound like, and these drums rolled out and some kind of string something, and she just started to move in the living room and just move around the living room. And then she put her arms up in a little shimmy. She started to laugh, and then she started to cry. Put her head back, just started to whirl around the room to the drums and the music. It was, wow, it was great, but whoa. After the song was over, hey, 7:30, I can still call Margaret. Hello, Margaret Weiss's room. Hi, hello, can I speak to Margaret? I am so sorry. Margaret has passed on. What? Yes, Sunday night. Oh, it was time. Her arthritis had gotten so bad, We could no longer get her out of bed, even using the lift. She was ready. I'm sorry. Who am I talking to? Mariana. I work here on Margaret's floor at the nursing center. We will all miss her. She's been with us for many, many years. Okay. Oh, Is her family going to have a service? No, Margaret never spoke of family, and she did not want a service. No, my people will remember me. That's what Margaret always said. Each night I would put the headset on, and she would talk to all the people who called. Were you one? Yes. It brought her much happiness. Now, I must go. Of course. Thank you. Mariana. And you are? Joy. Yes! The dancer.
Brava.
Thank you.
I had to go get my box of tissues because I realized I left them too far away. That was absolutely beautiful, Anne, as I have come to expect from you. Our next storyteller, Donna Washington, is actually celebrating a birthday today. And as her husband, those of us in the industry call him the David, didn't plan anything, and she has absolutely nowhere to be today. She's decided to spend her entire day with us. Please welcome fabulous storyteller, the birthday girl, a featured teller at Jonesboro many times, and our favorite, Mrs. Donna Washington.
Wow. Thank you so very much, Jessica. And thank you, Anne. That's lovely. You are one of my favorite storytellers, I have to say. Though quite a few of my favorite storytellers are here today. I want to say that I am an Army kid, military brat, which basically means I have grown up all over the world, but mostly in Asia. And my father was an Army officer, and that meant that we went to Seoul American Elementary School when I was little, between the grades third and sixth. And one thing I have learned about being in different schools in different parts of the world is that they have different disaster preparedness depending on where you live. So when I lived in Seoul, Korea, we had fire drills like everyone else had, but we also had bomb drills because South Korea is still in a war with North Korea. It is one of the oldest, hottest wars we have going right now in the world, and they have the most militarized border, the demilitarized zone, right there in the middle of North and South Korea. So when the alarms would go off, the way that the school was set up, they had different buildings for each grade level. There was a second grade building and a third grade building and a fourth grade building. That way they were really far away from each other so that I guess if they dropped bombs on us, they couldn't get everybody at once. But when the alarm went off, we would have to go find our designated bomb area, and we'd go in there and the teacher would close the door and we'd wait until the bomb siren went off. When we left South Korea, we moved to Lawton, Oklahoma. And in Lawton, Oklahoma, we had tornado drills as well as fire drills, but we didn't have bomb drills because we're in the middle of the country. But in the tornado drill, you would leave. We were on a second-story building, so this was between 7th and 9th grade. You would leave where you were. You'd go to the bottom floor or the basement, and then you had to take a hard book with you, and everyone would squat down by the walls and put the hard book over our heads in case the tornado came and debris fell from above. We would have our little heads protected with our hard books. Now, we lived at that particular time between 7th and 9th grade, right outside of Fort Sill, which is one of the largest munitions bases in the country. And my father was an officer, so normally we lived on the base. But for the first time in my life, I lived on the economy. That means with civilians. It's the first time I ever went to school with people who were not associated with the Army. It was a culture shock. It was very weird to go to school with kids whose parents were not military. They just move differently and think about the world in a really different way. Now, my father was at Fort Sill because he was a munitions expert. And what that means is Fort Sill is one of those places where they fire off cannons and really large munitions. Sometimes they shake the windows in your house. And when you first live near Fort Sill, I'm pretty sure it's astonishing and a little scary. But after you live there for a while, it's sort of like living with trains, right? If you live near a train and it goes by and everyone else around you who's just got there can hear it, but you don't even hear it anymore. Well, when I was in 8th grade, the Fort Sill, as I said, it's a munitions range. It's huge. And at the boundaries of the munitions, there are huge fences, big, huge fence with barbed wire at the top. And when I was in 8th grade, a group of people came and moved sort of like a tent camp near those big fence that goes around Fort Sill out in the hinterlands. Nobody built out there because nobody wants to be that close to munitions base. But this group of people came to live there. And it sort of got around in the community that there was a group of people in camp there. Nobody knew what they were about. So the Stars and Stripes, which was the newspaper that handled all this sort of stuff for the military, they sent a reporter out to find out who they were. And it turned out they were a cult, a doomsday cult. And they had come to live by the military base because they believed the world was about to end, and consequently, Fort Sill was going to go up in smoke because it's full of munitions, and they wanted to be at ground zero because they didn't want to survive through the Holocaust that was to come. So Stars and Stripes covered it. So the people on the military base came to find out about it. And someone in the local press in Lawton, Oklahoma came to find out about it. And so they sent their own reporters out there because apparently they did not trust the military reporters. And they found out their own information. So pretty soon, everybody in the area knew that the world was coming to an end. And not only that, we knew the exact time and the exact day. Their guru, whoever he was, knew the answer to this. And this happened to fall, this particular day, on a Friday. You know what that meant for 8th graders? Should we do our homework on Thursday night? There was a general discussion about it. And there was a lot of born-again Christians at our school. And they were not worried about it because they figured if the world was going to end on Friday at noon, they would be raptured beforehand and they wouldn't have to worry about doing their homework. Then there were a whole lot of people who decided that if the world actually ended, there would be no point to doing the homework on Thursday night. And so, it wasn't a big deal. Then there were the people who wanted to hedge their bets. The teachers were like that. The teachers realized we were making this discussion. They were right on top of this. And on Tuesday, when I went into my first class, which was my English class, I had it first thing in the morning, Ms. Harrelson announced that whether or not the world ended at noon, we should do our homework because her class happened to be forenoon. Some people thought that was reasonable, some people did not. Every class, the teacher at some point would address the end of the world and point out that they were before noon. My history teacher, his class went till 12:15. So he said you could come and he might not be able to grade your homework if the world ended, but you should do it, and he would mark it in the book so that if the world did not end, you would get credit for doing your homework. The teachers in the afternoon said we should just do whatever we felt was right. Now, I'm one of those people who was angling to keep my GPA up. And I thought, if the world ends, so I will end with a really nice grade point. And if it doesn't end, I want to hedge my bets and just do the homework. More than half the kids at the school decided not to do that. And some of them were like, even if I'm not raptured, the world might end and it still might not be a problem. It won't even matter for the earlier classes because the world will be over. So the day arrives. It's Friday, we come in, and it's clear the teachers have decided not to teach anything. They're not going to teach anything. They're just going to collect homework from whoever did it, and then they're just going to put on a video or something. There was no point in trying to get anyone to pay attention to anything. We were all talking about the world ending. And our history teacher, whose class ended at 12:15, right before I had lunch, he just told us to take out our history books. And do you remember when you had to sort of read through the chapter and then answer questions? What did you remember at the very end? So that's what he decided to do. Open your history books to section 9 and read and answer the questions. That way, if you finished them, great. If you didn't finish them, it would be homework. So I handed my homework in like a good child, and about half the class had decided not to do it. And the teacher just checked it off and he didn't say anything about it. And we sat there in class waiting. Nobody was reading their history book. We were quiet, but nobody was reading because every few minutes we'd look up to see how close we were to noon. And then as we got about 5 minutes from noon, we stopped pretending that we were reading. And everyone just sat back in their chairs and stared at the clock. And the history teacher didn't even pretend like he thought we were reading. He was doing the same thing. He just turned around. We were all looking up at the clock, waiting for 12. And the clock hit 12. And we waited. And then bang, bang, all these loud sounds went off, and the windows started rattling at the school, and everybody in the school started screaming. You could hear screaming in the halls. You could hear screaming all in the classrooms. The teachers screamed. We all screamed. And then we remembered that we lived near Fort Sill, the largest munitions base in the country. And at noon every single day, they fired off cannons. We were hearing a sound that happened every day, but we had stopped hearing it because it happened every day. And in the silence of that school, all the cannons went off. So we screamed for about 30 seconds until we all remembered this. And then we all just started laughing. The entire school filled with laughter. The teacher was laughing so hard he was beet red. We were laughing. In fact, we all sort of came out. We were looking down the halls. Everybody was laughing. The principal tried to come on the intercom, but he was laughing too much. His name was Abe Dutchendorf. He was John Denver's cousin. And he was on the intercom trying to calm everybody down, but he was laughing and he just turned it off. Eventually, we all calmed down, and then the buzzer went off, and we went off to lunch, some of us first lunch. And I'm thinking about the world that we are living in right now, and that we are in such a state where we're trying to figure out what we can do and how we can reach out. And we are scared, and we are worried, and we are sad. First, do your homework, figure out what is useful. Don't just rush in blindly going, I'm going to save the world. There will be people who will try to take advantage of us. Make sure that you know that you're not giving your hard-earned money to people who aren't going to actually help. And second, the world's not going to end at noon. So we need to keep moving through. Time is going to pass, and we're still going to need to help. This is not going to be quick. It's going to be a long cleanup. We're looking at a year's, couple probably, to get people back to where they need to be. So don't exhaust yourself at the beginning of all of it. And last but not least, let us remember that no matter how scary everything gets, as humans, at some point, there will be a time for laughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for bringing us that laughter. I do have another theory from your story, which is that actually I think the world probably just ended and none of us got raptured. So, I mean, the good news is now we're here and we might as well make the most of it, right? I mean, thank you, Donna Washington. I have the great honor and privilege of introducing someone who I've only recently met and only online, but from our correspondence, I can tell he's an incredible person and an incredible human being. And he is also the president of the International Storytelling Center, who is making time to be with us today, despite everything that is going on this weekend. So thank you so much for being here. Please welcome Michael Carson.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Happy birthday, Donna. I enjoyed your story. And Jessica, thank you. I'm actually from the DC area, so I saw you're in Fairfax, so it's good to meet you virtually. And thank our board members who are on the call, Adam Booth and Lynn Ford, who I was supposed to meet this weekend, but unfortunately we weren't able to meet because of Hurricane Helene and all the damage. But I just want to thank everybody for coming today and also for inviting me, but most importantly for thinking about Appalachia and Northeast Tennessee and Western North Carolina and the devastation that we did not anticipate, because we're supposed to be a climate haven and people are moving here from Florida to get away from hurricanes. But the hurricane followed us and actually devastated our region last weekend. So we really thank everyone for your support and your compassion and thinking about us. And I think the lesson that we've learned this week is the compassion of the community in Appalachia, but most importantly, the compassion of storytellers. And I was actually in Maryland for a birthday party, and we had to cancel the festival over the phone. I was speaking to Susan O'Connor, our program director, and Sandy Reeves and a few board members, and we decided, because of the devastation, and that the resources really needed to go to the relief effort this weekend, to go to first responders, to go to community members, to the town of Jonesboro. We decided to cancel the festival. And while I was driving, stopping at rest areas, I started hearing from storytellers. I heard from Tim Lowry, from Andy Offit Irwin, and many other storytellers. And Tim Lowry said he was going to arrange to come and provide relief from Charleston, South Carolina. And Andy said he was going to come up from Georgia. And just the outpouring of compassion from storytellers has really moved us this week, and realize our purpose is to make the world a better place through storytelling. And so we were really inspired by the outpouring of support from storytellers, but also we still had Storytelling Live. So we have a weekly Teller in Residence series that we canceled last Saturday because we didn't have electricity. But then once the power came back, we had Donald Davis tell this week, and he was incredible. He really helped to heal people. In fact, once people heard we were still having Donald performing at Storytelling Live, we actually had a few shows sell out. And this is in an area where still thousands of people don't have water. The town where my father is from, just 20 miles west of Jonesboro, not only did they not have water, but the hospital was closed. And we have hospitals closed. We had one hospital, people had to be airlifted just 15 miles from Jonesboro. So it's really a catastrophic situation that, when I think, Donna, you talked about the bomb drill and you talked about being in Korea and Oklahoma, we didn't really have a preparedness program. So we didn't know what to do. So people really didn't know what to do in this situation. So we're learning on the fly. And my wife is from New Orleans, so I've been involved in a few relief efforts directly and evacuating family members from New Orleans. But collectively in Jonesboro and in Northeast Tennessee, we didn't know what to do. And so now we have Tennessee National Guard, we have FEMA, we have so many community groups that are working. And it's really, I mean, we're suffering, but we're uplifted by the spirit of the community, and we're uplifted by storytellers. So Donald provided healing. And then last night, at the idea of Paula Lepp, Bill Lepp's wife, we had Storytelling Giving Back, which was at the Jackson Theater, which is a brand new theater renovated theater in Jonesboro. And we were going to really commemorate the theater during the festival, but because there was no festival, we had storytellers give back at the Jackson Theater. So we had Bill Lepp, Paul Strickland, Andy Offit Irwin, Sheila Arnold and Donald Davis, and Ed Stuyvesant all perform. And it really brought the community of Jonesboro together and just showed the spirit of storytellers. And in my 6 months, I will have worked here 6 months in October 15th. So in my time here, I've met so many storytellers through Storytelling Live and through other events in Johnson City and our partnership with East Tennessee State University. But we've really been buoyed by the power of storytelling. So Susan O'Connor, our program director, told me last night that she really wants to send messages of outpouring and messages of support from storytellers to our staff, because we've heard from probably over 50 storytellers, and I think the power you have to really spread hope and spread joy and spread love and also respite from, as you said, someone said, all the craziness in the world right now and natural disasters and wars and our election. I think the power of storytelling to heal and educate and provide solace has been incredible. So I think all of you, and especially for this event, which is helping to support community groups in Northeast Tennessee, and our event last night that went to the United Way, and Donald's Storytelling Live that went to United Way. I just want to thank all of you for your support. And as you said, Donna, the world, one day we'll wake up and the sun is shining. The sun is shining today in Jonesboro. We were talking about it in church, how now we're blessed with a few weeks of sunshine. So hopefully we can start to dry out and start to recover from the storm. But there will be a day where we'll all be back together again. Hopefully for next year's festival, but next year also for Storytelling Live and virtual events. There'll be a day where all of us will be back together and we'll get to hear all of your stories, but also get to share your stories with the communities, with the people in Northeast Tennessee, the people in Asheville, which is only 60 miles away, that is devastated. And my step-grandfather is from Asheville, so just to see the devastation there is just, it's just shocking. And Connie Reagan Blake is there, and she tried to come last night, but it was a 4-hour drive, so she smartly didn't come. So, but she texted me this morning and sends her regards to everyone. And I just want to thank everyone for your support. It's been tremendous working here. I came from economic development background. I lived in Africa for 11 years and have worked on international issues for 30 years and was lucky to come to Jonesboro. And I think the support and really the solidarity of the storytelling community is what's most impressed me and what's most buoyed all of us. So on behalf of our staff, especially Susan and Sandy and Crystal and international storytelling staff and our board and the town of Jonesboro, who really appreciates your support, and Northeast Tennessee, we just thank all of you for your support and compassion and wisdom. I think storytelling is wisdom, and it's an outpouring from the heart to hear all of your stories. And I love it. I just love hearing all of your stories. And I'm sorry we didn't get to meet in person this year, but I know we'll get to meet again soon. So once again, thank all of you. And Jessica, thank you for contacting me. I usually ride my bike, so I have weird habits. I ride my bike at night. I ride my bike Sunday afternoons after church. So I rode yesterday because I knew I probably will ride tonight after the prayer service. But I just want to thank everybody for your support and that we're here for you. Any support that you need as storytellers, we're here for you. Any support, we have family members, we have family that are in the countryside that unfortunately they don't have water. I think they have electricity now, but we have at least 2 staff members whose families don't have water. So they really do appreciate your support. But any support you need as storytellers, I think through Susan and Crystal and myself and Sandy, just reach out to us and we will reconvene as soon as we can. If I think the virtual is a great medium. That's how I met Sheila Arnold, and I saw her tell for the first time last night, which was even in the coffee shop. I'm having coffee and somebody says, "Wasn't Sheila tremendous last night?" I mean, that's just the level of impact that the event had last night. And just remember that you as storytellers are having phenomenal impact on the world and on our lives. And I'm personally touched. I'm not a storyteller, maybe a street storyteller, but not an artistic storyteller. But it's just touching to hear all of your stories and remember the impact you're having and the love that you're spreading to Appalachia and Northeast Tennessee. So Jessica, once again, thank you, and Claire and Lynn and everyone who invited me, and I look forward to meeting you all in the future. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Michael. Honestly, I mean, I can't imagine starting a new job and then having to deal with all of this in your first 6 months. So, and what a shame that the festival, I know amongst everything else, it's small in comparison, but that is your income. It's a lot of other people's, living as well. So we are, and the community it promotes through storytellers. And honestly, storytellers are amazing. I have to say, what a fabulous bunch of community there is. Now as we know, that this event is actually a fundraiser. So if you can try and give generously, either with your money or with your time, there's plenty of charities that you could just, like Crisis Hotline or something, you could just call and make 10 minutes worth of phone calls and see what people need and input that into a database. So it doesn't have to be money, it can be time, but whatever you can do will be gratefully received. We'll put all the links into the chat, or you can go to the bettersaidthandone.com website, because they're all the charities that we've verified are on there. So thank you, Michael, once again. We really appreciate you coming and talking to us. Okay, so we're now going to get on with our show. Our next storyteller is the fabulous Alton Takayama Chung. Now, I met, and knew Alton during the pandemic, went and saw him in Hawaii. This year, he's a favourite at all festivals. He was supposed to be at the National Festival, weren't you, Alton? But, he just got back from a massive tour all over the Far East with Korea and India and Singapore. I mean, honestly, he went everywhere, rushed back from Johannesburg not to have it happen. So hi, Alton. Very nice to have you on our stage. And I'm going to have the pleasure of sharing the stage with you at the St. Louis Storytelling Festival in November. So welcome, everybody, to Alton Chung.
Well, thank you so very much. And happy birthday, Donna and Michael. Well, 6 months. What a start. And, I guess I'm thrilled to be part of this and thank you, Jessica and Claire and Linda, for putting all this together. So the story I have for you today, it comes from Japan. And all folktales in Japan always begin with Mukashi, aru tokoro ni. Once, there was a kind old man, and he had a little white dog named Shiro. Shiro meaning white in Japanese. And he loved that dog, and the dog loved him. And one day, this man who's a farmer, he's out in his field, and Shiro begins barking and then pawing at the ground and digging. And the man goes, "Oh, what do you have there, Shiro?" And he got his shovel and began digging. Right where Shiro was digging, he dug down. Suddenly, his shovel went thunk, cleared away the dirt. Oh, it was an iron pot. He picked it up. Oh, it was heavy. And he opened the lid. It was filled with gold coins. Someone had buried this iron pot in his field a long time ago and forgotten about it. There's a fortune, but what to do with it? Thought about it. And then he went back to his home and he invited everyone in the small village, everyone to come to his house. And he gave each one a gold coin. It was more money than these people had ever seen in their entire lives. And everyone thought this was the most wonderful, most magical thing that could ever happen, especially to this kind old man. Except mean old man who lived next door. Unfair. I deserve to have gold too. I know. And so the next day, that mean old man, he went up to the kind old man and said, oh, please, may I borrow Shiro just for the day, just to play? Kind old man, being the man that he was, said, of course, he borrows Shiro. Shiro heard this and began tugging his leash, going, Retro, bad idea, master, bad idea. But being the man that he was, he had already given his words. He said, please make sure that you send Shiro home when you're done playing with him. Of course. That mean old man, he took that white dog, took it out to his own field. And he picked up the dog and looked at him and said, find me gold. Now, Shiro wasn't about to do anything for this mean old man. So he looked around the sky, he scratched himself, and he chased after a fly. The mean old man got angry, and he threatened Shiro with his shovel. Shiro looked around and sniffed here and sniffed there, and he finally patted the ground and sat down. That mean old man, he got Shiro, tied his leash to a stake and staked it to the ground. As soon as he did that, Shiro began pulling at his leash, trying to get away, but it was too late. That mean old man, he dug down. He dug down. Suddenly his shovel would thunk, cleared away the dirt. But what he found wasn't an iron pot. What he found was rags and bones and bits of pottery and this black oozy stuff that roiled up in the ground. It smelled awful. That main old man got angry. Got so angry, got his shovel and killed the dog. Oh, what have I done? What have I done? And he took that body of that dog and he took it to the kind old man's house. He laid it on the door and said, sorry, terrible accident, gotta go, bye. And he scuttled away. The kind old man, he was heartbroken. This was his friend. Oh, what to do? He took his friend in, he cleaned him off, and he cried over him, prayed over him all night long. In the morning, he wrapped him in a nice blanket and took him out to the garden, a garden that he and Cheryl loved so well, and he buried him in the garden. And the last thing that this kind old man did was he got a small little pine tree sapling and he planted it on the grave of his friend. And wouldn't you know, something magical happened. And suddenly this tree began to grow and grow and grow. In a matter of a few months, there's a fully mature pine tree growing there. And here it was now, December. Snow was on the ground, the winds were blowing, and that kind old man walked by that tree, and the wind moving through the branches of the tree, he could have sworn that he heard his friend's voice saying, Master, make something useful of me, Master. The kind old man looked up at the tree and said, I should make a mochi mortar, an uzu, and a wooden hammer, a kine, to make mochi in honor of Shiro. Kind old man, he chopped down that tree, and up from the trunk, he hollowed it out, and he made a mortar, an uzu. And he got, from the branches and limbs, he made a wooden hammer, a kine. And he took it into his house, and he filled up that wooden mortar with hot, sticky rice. He had a little water. He picked up that kine, and he brought it down on the hot, sticky rice. He brought it down, boom. Out of the uzu came this jet of fine, dry rice. Picked up the kine again. Boom. This fountain of dry rice came pouring out of the uzu. The man didn't know what to do. He got a bag, he filled it up with rice. Got another bag, filled that up with rice too. And the fountain kept going, and pretty soon he had a year's supply of rice. He had money, he had food. Now the most wonderful thing could happen. Except mean old man who lived next door was looking for a hole in his fence, going, unfair. I deserve to have rice too. I know. The next day, that mean old man went up to the kind old man and said, oh, please, may I borrow your uzo and kine? I too like to make mochi in honor of Shiro. Kind old man, being the man that he was, said, of course, you may borrow the uzo and kine. Mean old man took that uzo and kine into his own house. He filled it with hot, sticky rice. He added a little bit of water. He picked up that kine and brought it down on the hot, sticky rice. Thump. What came out wasn't fine, dry rice. What came out were rags and bones and bits of pottery, this black oozy substance that roiled over the top of it, touched, stained everything it touched, and it smelled awful. And mean old man got angry. Got so angry because he picked up an axe and he chopped up the uzo and he chopped up the kine, but he wasn't done yet. He picked up all those pieces of wood and all that garbage and he threw it in his fireplace and he burned it all to ashes. When that kind old man came back looking for his uzo and the kine, mean old man pointed to his fireplace and said, there, stop, bah! He scuttled away. That kind old man looked down at the ashes. This was all that he had left to remember his friend. He picked up a bucket, he scooped some of the ashes into the bucket, and he took it to the garden. He was going to scatter the ashes in the garden that he and Shiro loved so well. And we did. Wouldn't you know, something magical happened. As soon as he began scattering the ashes, sa, foom, foom, sa, this garden began to bloom. Flowers, everything turned green, flowers blossomed. And here it was, the middle of winter, and this garden was green. And everyone thought this was a miracle. People came from miles around just to marvel at this beautiful garden in the middle of winter. And the Lord who ruled over this part of Japan heard about this. And he called that kind old man to please come to his castle. See, he had planted a cherry tree when he was a young man, and the cherry tree had blossomed and all was bloomed, but the last winter was a very hard winter, and that tree had died. And he asked that kind old man, please, can you come and see what you could do for my tree? That kind old man brought his bucket of ashes, climbed up the branch of the tree, began scattering the ashes into the branches of the tree. And wouldn't you know, something magical happened. Sa, sa, oh, the tree burst into blooms, delicate white pink blossoms. Here it was the middle of winter, and this cherry tree, this large cherry tree, was now alive again and filled with beautiful flowers. And that Lord, he was so pleased. He was so pleased that he rewarded that kind old man. He gave him pieces of artwork, rare silks, gold. Oh, and the last thing he did was he gave that man a title. From then on, he was always known as Sir, the man who could make the trees blossom. And now, this farmer was now elevated into the ranks of the nobility. And everyone in the whole area thought this was the most wonderful, magical thing could ever happen. People came from miles around to ask his advice, to give him gifts, to congratulate him. And everyone thought this was, the man deserved this. Except mean old man who lived next door. Unfair. I deserve to have a title too. I deserve to have a title too. I know. And he went to his fireplace and he got the rest of that ash, put it in a bucket, and he went running out his door. Now, it just so happened the Lord was touring this part of this area that he ruled with all of his soldiers. That mean old man ran to the front of that column and began throwing handfuls of ashes into the bare trees on either side of the road, saying, I can make the trees blossom too. I can make the trees blossom too. And wouldn't you know, something magical happened. This breeze picked up and gathered up all that ash and then blew it into the faces of the soldiers and the Lord, and they were hacking and they were coughing. And the Lord was so angry, so angry, he said, bring me that man. And the soldiers grabbed hold of that mean man and he brought him to the Lord, and he looked out at this man and said, what is the meaning of this? And that mean old man was so scared. He told him everything about how he had killed the dog and how he chopped up the kine and uzo and he burned them all to ashes. The Lord got so angry. He got so angry that he sent that mean old man to jail for a long time. But when the man came back, he was a changed man. He went to see that kind old man and he made amends. He made amends with that kind old man. And now, every year at New Year's, these two old men get together and they make mochi in honor of Shiro. Oshimai. It is ended.
Oh, Alton, fantastic story as always. Your expressions and it's like a masterclass on how to tell a story on Zoom. So thank you so much. You. Now, just another little housekeeping announcement for anybody who just joined us or didn't come here at the start. Unfortunately, two storytellers, Willy, Claflin and Ivan Coyote, could not be with us today for various reasons. So sorry about that, but we have got so many other wonderful tellers. Even our next storyteller, I have to give her all the praise. She's my co-producer, co-partner in 6 Feet Apart Productions, and she is absolutely amazing, even though she does drill down to a little bit more information than I personally want to go into. But without that, we wouldn't be having such a great time in 6 Feet Apart. She's amazing. She's a comedian. She's a storyteller. She's an author. She does all these different things. And she was supposed to be at Exchange Place at Jonesborough, and we are so sad that she's not there. But in the scheme of things, really relatively unimportant. But let me delighted to welcome the fabulous Regina Stoops.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks so much. Thank you for that introduction. It is my certainly privilege and honor to be here today. So thank you for everyone. It is a very exciting day. It's winter break, and I'm at the park with my 3 boys, ages 7, 6, and 4. And they're very excited because we're finally going to get to fly my oldest son, Ryan's remote controlled helicopter. I'm excited because this is all part of my plan to wear them out. So I'm the grown-up. I get to fly the helicopter, even though my tech skills fall somewhere between a fax machine, and a flip phone. Pretty soon I get the hang of it, and I'm managing to bring it up and bring it down and not crash it. And I'm flying it from one end of this big grassy field to the other, and the kids are chasing it, and they pick it up and they run back, and we do this over and over and over again, and they're getting tired. This is a great plan. Now, the 6-year-old Jack, he begs and begs and begs to fly the helicopter. And in a moment of maternal generosity and madness, I agree. And he takes the helicopter and he goes up and he goes up and he goes left and he goes right, and he's doing pretty well, except he keeps going higher and higher and higher, like jet stream higher. And I'm like, Jack, you got to bring it down. And I'm trying not to panic him, but I'm like, Jack. And he panics and he full throttles it right into the top of a tree about 100 feet up. And this is a tree that's been eating toys and kites and balls and small animals for over 100 years. And Ryan has an epic meltdown. He runs up to the tree and he starts to kick the tree, and he's hitting the tree with his little fists, and they're getting scraped and they're getting bloodied. And I run over and I grab him and I put him in a bear hug, which is my mom trick to calm him down. And but at this point, unfortunately, the rigidity of his autism is winning over my repeating, use your flex brain, Ryan. Use your flex brain, Ryan. He just keeps repeating, it's too high, it's too high, it's too high. It's December, it's getting dark, it's getting cold, and I'm completely overwhelmed at this moment. I'm frustrated and I'm angry. I'm angry at Jack, even though it's not really his fault. I mean, okay, technically it is his fault, but come on, he's 6 years old. I'm the grown up. Well, what did I think was going to happen? I'm angry that I have a child whose autism has completely taken over. I'm frozen because I don't have a plan for this. I've got a helicopter in a tree. I have an inconsolable child. I have 2 other children that I need to take care of. I'm running low on snacks, and this park has no bathroom. The 6-year-old Jack, he's come over at this point. He's over to the tree, and he's just devastated. He still has the remote control in his hand, and he doesn't know what to do because he loves his big brother Ryan, and he does anything he can to help him out and to play with him and to engage him. And now this. So I unwrap one arm and I pull Jack in. I have them both, and I whisper, Jack, honey, it's not your fault. But I can tell by the look on his face that he doesn't really believe me. A few of the moms and some other kids come over to the tree just to see what all the ruckus is about. But there's nothing they can do. It's too high up there. It's too dangerous to climb up. The moms offer me some of their snacks because they can tell I'm going to be there for a while. Meanwhile, the 4-year-old Evan, he's made the wise choice to go over to the basketball court and just ride his scooter around in circles. So he's far enough away to not be in the middle of the chaos, but yet I can still have eyes on him and he can have eyes on me. It's getting darker and darker, and the red light on the helicopter is still blinking and blinking and blinking from 100 feet up, like mocking us just to show us where it's at. I called the Parks and Rec department. I think that's a good idea, right? I'll call them. Maybe they have a maintenance person that can come over and get that thing out of the tree. Only it's after 5 o'clock, so the city offices are all closed. Well, I decide I'll call the fire department. I know I'm desperate at this point. I'm going to call the fire department. I don't know. They have a ladder. They have trucks. Maybe this falls into that cat stuck in a tree category. I don't know, but I don't know what to do. So I make the call. Fire Station 7, this is Reggie. Hey, hi, Reggie. Listen, look, I know you have more important things to do, and I'm really sorry to bother you right now, but we're over at Del Prado Park, and my son's helicopter has gotten stuck in a tree, and I'm sorry to ask this. And just before I'm just about ready to lose it completely, I just whisper, he has autism, and he's really melting down, and I don't know what to do. I totally get it. My daughter has autism. Let me talk to my captain. I'll see what we can do. And 10 minutes later, the cavalry rolls up. Firefighter Reggie has convinced his crewmates and his captain to come over and mount a rescue of a toy helicopter. Well, The bucket truck, the one that would have been perfect for this particular rescue, it's actually out on probably a real rescue. And so they brought over the standard issue fire truck with the standard issue ladder, which, as Reggie finds out when he gets way up to the top and reaches out, is just a little bit too short. Reggie comes back down, and Reggie's a professional. You know, he has been around. He's got a bag of tricks. He's been on a lot of rescues, maybe not this particular kind of rescue, but he knows what to do. So he walks over to the fire truck and he opens that side compartment and he pulls out a pole that's got a long hook at the end of it. And he climbs back up the ladder. And he gets to that top step, the one that's probably not really a step. And he reaches out and he reaches out and he reaches out and he snags the helicopter. Only the tree doesn't want to give up easily. And so we see the red light go back and forth in this tug of war until finally Reggie can loosen the helicopter and he gets it into his hand. And we watch the red light descend one rung at a time. He gets down, he has the helicopter, and there's a smattering of applause from the crowd, kind of like a golf clap. The crowd that has gathered to see the rescue, only to find out it's the rescue of a toy helicopter, but they want to be supportive nonetheless. Reggie walks over to Ryan, who has calmed down and has been silently watching the whole rescue unfold. And he puts the helicopter in Ryan's little chubby, scraped up hands. And Ryan leans in and I prompt him and he says, "Thank you." And I don't know who is happier at this moment. I don't know if it's Reggie or Ryan or me. But I do know that there wouldn't have been a rescue that day if firefighter Reggie hadn't decided to take action. If he decided to say, "I'll take care of this," rather than say, "That's not really our department. I think somebody else can probably take care of that for you." And yes, it was a toy helicopter. But to one 7-year-old boy, it was the only thing in the world that would make his world right that day. So don't leave it to other people to take action. At this moment, we are the other people. So thank you. Thank you for doing what you can to make the world a little more right for those in need today. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. It's interesting to see your serious side, introspective side, because I only know your sassy side. So thank you very much. And this is truly the perfect lead in to this short slideshow that I've put together for you. It's taken about 25 takes because the damage is so far-reaching that it really is inconceivable. And I kept cutting back and trying to channel my inner chirpy Katie Couric, but the truth is what you will see from Florida on up into Tennessee. And the point is simply, yes, we are those other people. And the needs are such that each of us will feel called to give to a certain community or a certain service. But whatever speaks to you, I thank you. On September 26, 2024, Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida's Gulf Coast. Instead of dying out there, as hurricanes often do, she raged on up through the South as a Category 4 hurricane. Small towns along the Gulf Coast like Steinhatchee and Cedar Key, considered Florida's Key West for people on a budget, were sorely affected because of their vulnerable situation and their small town resources. One couple who had just rebuilt their hotel after Hurricane Idalia woke to this on the 27th. Chimney Rock, North Carolina, a popular hiking destination, saw the winds and rains come in the afternoon, and they raged overnight so that when people woke in the morning, Chimney Rock no longer existed. But as the storm passed and we emerged, people began to ask, what can I do? Where can I help? Where am I called? There's a group of pilots dedicated to rescuing people and animals who've been stranded by the storm. And just before the storm hit, this man and his dog capsized, but were rescued by the Coast Guard. In Florida, the manatee is an endangered species, a gentle creature that eats only the grass in the rivers and lakes where it lives. When the floodwaters rose, they carried the manatees inland, and when the waters receded, these animals were left stranded. But Florida Fish and Wildlife has a large group of volunteers dedicated to finding and removing these animals to appropriate habitats. Even bees are affected. If a queen is killed, the rest of the hive usually dies. This man, a beekeeper, and several of his cohorts find bees and restore hives immediately after a storm. It seems so insignificant, but much of the flora and fauna of our coastlines will be wrecked without the bees. And consider this, 30 to 35% of the food we eat has been pollinated. Planes brought in supplies, and when planes could not land, pack mules, God bless the pack mules, brought food in to others who were stranded. Some folks stepped up to help with distribution centers, and others to help with the ungodly job of cleanup, shovel after shovelful of mud, truckload and truckload of debris, water that's soaked carpet and furniture and drywall, and always the risk of black mold. It will take months to find people to recover roofs and re-roof homes, but we are the lucky ones. Many lost their lives or are still missing. Our infrastructure has been destroyed in an unspeakable way, not just town to town, but city to city and state to state. And that too will take years to rebuild. The waterfronts need to be reshaped with new barriers installed, new sandbars built up. But we all do what we can, feeding, providing supplies, providing comfort, offering hope. We ask you to please donate to whatever cause or in whatever way you find meaningful to you. And I would point out that Cedar Key is so severely damaged by this storm that they can only process checks right now. And that address is in the top left corner. Thank you, and thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Linda, for putting that together. It was a very visual representation of what's been going on. And thank you everyone for being here again. Thank you for all your donations and generosity. Okay, we're going to keep straight on. We're not going to have an intermission, so you can just take care of yourself, hopefully. And our next storyteller is someone that absolutely terrifies me. She's absolutely inspirational. She's wonderful, but she does frighten the living daylights out of me. And I have got to know her much better over the pandemic and found out not only is she terrifying, but she's also fun. She's hilarious. She's really talented, and I now absolutely adore her. And my word for Diane Follett is she's lovely. Off you go, Diane.
Well, thank you for having me be a part of this. I feel, very sad by what's happening now because it happened in New Orleans with my family, and they made it through, and some didn't, but many did. And here's my story. I want to get weepy. Here we go. When you're poor, it doesn't take much for the whole bottom just to fall out. There was a farmer who lost his crops 3 years in a row because of bad weather. Things got so bad, he couldn't feed his family anymore. So he sent his wife and his daughter to live with his wife's family for a while. He said, I'm going to the city. I'm going to find me a job, and I'll be back. So off he went to the city. But when you're a poor farmer, what kind of job can you find in the city? He became a street sweeper, a job most people in the city wouldn't even think about. And hoping to save as much money as possible, he worked long, hard hours. And soon, with all that sweeping he had done, he saved a little bit of money. Not much, a little bit of money, but he got afraid. Carrying this money on him, some thieves might steal it. So what he did, he decided to go and ask the jeweler in town, a man who hired him every once in a while to sweep in front of his store, if he'd keep his money there for safekeeping. So he went and he asked the jeweler, to keep his money there for safekeeping. And of course, the jeweler was more than willing. Oh, of course, I will be glad to keep your money. I have a bulletproof safe in the back. I'll put your money in the back in the safe. When you want it, just come and get it. No problem. He said, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So he left his money with the jeweler. And as time goes by, that's what time does, 5 years went by. And the farmer, he thought he had enough money saved to go home. I mean, not a lot of money, but enough money. And he went to the jeweler to get his money. And when he walked in, he said, sir, I think I've got enough money now to go home, and I came to get my money. And the jeweler looked at him and said, my good man, what are you talking about? I've never seen you before in my life. What are you talking about? You know me. 5 years. At the end of every month, I brought you my money here for safekeeping. You know me. He says, God knows what you did with your money. Do you have a witness? No, I didn't think I needed a witness. If you don't have a witness to bring here, you don't have a leg to stand on. Now, get out of my shop. Get out of my shop. I don't have time for this. No. I can't leave. My money, 5 years. 5 years, I need my money. Oh, you're not leaving? Get out of my shop. No, I can't leave. I need my money. Oh, you're not leaving. And the jeweler rang a bell, and 2 huge men came out of the back. And they grabbed the street sweeper and threw him out in the street. And stay out. And slammed the door. But there was the poor street sweeper, sitting on the ground crying. 5 years. 5 years. And as he sat there crying, there came a carriage down the road. Inside the carriage was a woman with her young daughter. And the young girl said, Mama, why is that man crying? Oh, honey, shh. Honey, I'm sure he doesn't want us to know why he's crying. But Mama, you said when people are sad, we should try and help them. From the mouths of babes, the woman, she stopped the carriage. They got out. They walked over to the street sweeper, and the woman said, "Excuse me, sir, I don't want to bother you, but my daughter, she was very interested in knowing why you look so troubled. Why are you so sad? Maybe it's something we can do to help." And the poor street sweeper looked up and he said, 5 years. 5 years. I've lost 5 years of my life. 5 years. And he told his sad, sad story about the jeweler and what happened to his money. And she said, "I've heard about that scoundrel of a jeweler. There must be something we can do. Must be something we can do." She said, "Let me see. Tomorrow, you come back and sweep in front of his store. And when you see me go in, you wait 10 minutes and then you come in and ask for your money. But don't say anything about what happened today. Just come in, ask for your money, and pray my plan works." Well, the street sweeper began to pray harder than he ever prayed before. And the woman, she went home and gathered up all her precious jewels and she put them in a jewelry box. The next morning, she went back to the jeweler and she walked in and she showed him her jewels. She said, "Sir, I'm new in this city. My family just moved here and I don't know anyone, and your reputation as being, an expert at buying jewels, and I came here for your advice." "What is it? How can I help?" "Well, my husband, he's gone away on business to a city far away, and now he's going to be staying longer than he thought, and he's asking me to join him. But he left no instructions on what to do with my jewels. If I leave them at home, they might be stolen. And if I take them with me on my journey, they might be stolen there too." "Oh, madam, I would not take the jewels on the journey." He said, Look, I have a bulletproof safe in the back. I will keep your jewels here, safe for you." "Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad there's some honest people in the world. Oh, thank you so much. But how will we do this? I don't know anybody in this town, and how will we get a witness?" "Oh, madam, you don't need a witness for this. You can trust me. I will put your jewels in the safe. When you want them, you just come and get them. No problem." Oh, I'm so glad to meet someone that's so honest. Thank you so much. And just then, the street sweeper, he came in. He said, "Sir, uh, I think I have enough money saved to go home now, and I came to get my money to go home." And for a moment, the jeweler, he looked angry. Then he tried to smile. Yes. Mhm. And he went back to his safe. He opened it, got the money, and he gave it to the street sweeper, who left immediately. And then he looked at the rich woman who was standing there. He said, "You see, people come here all the time asking me to keep their money." She says, "I knew I came to the right place," she said. "I just knew it." She said, "I think I have made my decision. I think I would like to leave my jewels here with you." "Oh, okay." And just then, her maid walked in and she said, Madam, things have changed. A messenger came today. Your husband is coming home this afternoon today." "Oh, what? He's coming home today? Oh, what good news. What good news. Oh, Julie, thank you, my friend. Thank you for offering to keep my jewels. Thank you so much." And she dashed out, leaving the jeweler grinding his teeth. On the very next day, this woman invited her friends and the street sweeper to her home. And after eating, she told a story about this scoundrel of a jeweler and what he did. And of course, her friends, they began to spread the story around. They passed it all around the town. And it didn't take long for you to see a sign outside the jeweler's door that said, "Out of business." Because no one wanted to do business with a man who would steal from the poorest of the poor. The farmer, he did go home. He sent for his wife and his daughter, restocked his farm. They lived there for many, many, many years. But you know what they say? Service to others is just our rent that we pay for our home here on earth. If you can give to people who are in need because of the hurricane, please give. Help any way you can. Any way you can. Thank you for listening of the Street Sweeper.
Oh, thank you, Diane. Another wonderful story, very inspirational and excellent message. Thank you.
You're
Now,
welcome.
we're going to move straight along. Our next storyteller is a fellow Californian who I actually haven't met. He's a spoken word poet, he's an author, he's an actor, he's a motivational speaker, and he was season 15 winner of America's Got Talent. He's founded a movement called Call to Move, which is an organization that helps young people express themselves through poetry. He's was also supposed to be at Exchange Place with my partner Regina and wasn't. So welcome, Brandon Leake, to our virtual stage. Lovely to meet you.
Pleasure is all mine. This is like my first storytelling soiree ever. So thank you all for the opportunity, and many prayers and blessings to all those who are being negatively impacted by the hurricanes. So yeah, I won't belabor the point. My grandmother used to tell me stories of her hometown, a small rural city called Boley, Oklahoma. She would tell me about this Negro town filled with all sorts of interesting characters. For instance, loose lip Willy. You couldn't tell him a secret, or else the entire town would find out with a matter of 10 minutes. Or 2-liter John. You may wonder how he got his name. Well, a bottle of moonshine would disappear around him as quickly as money would around anyone else. It was a very interesting place, she described. To me, her grandson, a young man who was born and raised in the inner city of Stockton, California. I remember one of our most real conversations. I had challenged her on the idea of prejudice and racism, saying that her viewpoint was far too old, was far too jaded to be realistically founded in how modern society works. She sat me down and she said, "Pookie, let me tell you about my hometown again. You remember loose lip Willy?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, when I was 7 years old, we as a town, we decided that we were going to have a celebration. We gathered all of the townsfolk. We made sure that we served some of the best food, macaroni and cheese fresh off the grill. We had hot dogs, and we had burgers. We had anything your heart could desire. And as we danced and as we sang and as we enjoyed one another's company, we all departed home before the street lights would come on. knowing that despite the fact this was a Negro town, this was still a sundown town. Loose Lip Willie somehow didn't make it home that night, Brandon. We only heard word about 2 weeks later. He was found in a levee. I asked my papa, what happened to him? He said, that's what happened when us Negroes don't get back home in enough time. My grandma sat on her front porch, and 2-liter Tony came up and he said, you know your auntie's gonna be headed back to the West soon. You should really think about following her. My grandma, at 6 years old, had never left her small town of Boley, Oklahoma a day in her life. She said, well, what's I know about the West? What's I know about big city living, bright lights, school grounds, unified fountains, and buses where I'm not forced to the back? It took my grandma 8 more years to get the bravery to journey out west. At this same time, a Negro pastor by the name of Percy J. Leake was raising his son in Louisiana. He had told him, boy, you gonna get yourself an education. I'm gonna take you out west so that way you can learn about our good God, about the God who saved us, who'd rescued our people from Egypt across Red Seas on dry land, about the God who freed us from the bondage of slavery, who led rebellions against slave masters for the sake of our freedom. His son, named in his likeness, looked up at his papa and said, do we get to eat on the way? And they made their journey westward. My grandfather, who took the name of his father, was in college, walking around a campus, going to the library when he saw a woman by the name of Linda K. Dukes. He was smitten the very minute he saw her. He looked her dead in the eyes and said, I ain't never seen nothing so gorgeous in my life. She smiled, blushed, her skin that of cotton. You don't want to know how that happened. But my grandpa, he said, can I make an honest woman's out of you? She said yes. And years later, her grandson looks her in the eyes and says, you don't know nothing about racism. You don't know nothing about discrimination. And she smiles and says, Pookie, let me tell you about my hometown and about how your ignorance was my greatest dream. That one day you may not know of the life I was born into. In an odd way, I laughed and I said, Nana, I think your dreams might have just come true. And with that, that'll be the end of my story.
Thank you, Brandon Leake. What a wonderful addition to our community you are. And we look forward to seeing you in Jonesboro next year. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the woman that I am most confused with. Lynn Ford. Today is Lynn's birthday too, so happy birthday to you, Lynn. Happy, blessed, wonderful birthday to you. Lynn is a favorite in Jonesboro, and we look forward to seeing you there again. Queen of the ghost story, queen of the Appalachian folktale. Take it away, Miss Lynn.
Thank you so much. Yes, Donna and I are sisters from different misters and mamas, but we celebrate this day often getting in touch with one another because you build community by sharing with others. Maya Angelou once said, "Giving liberates the soul of the giver. Giving liberates the soul of the giver." I'm hoping I'm not muted. Okay, thank you. Just saw the muted sign up beside mine. And so I'm going to share a story with you that comes from the diverse population of Suriname. Tales that may have begun in Africa and been blended along with the people in that place known as Suriname. In the early times, there was a very wealthy farmer. His fields always had a wonderful harvest. He had so much money that he could afford to have 2 wives. These days, that could be a problem, but he had no problem with that, and neither did his wives. They always received a great deal from him and lived in the same community, one on one side of the community and one on the other side. And they got along with one another very well, like sisters. But the first wife, well, she didn't socialize as much. She never invited the second wife to her home, and she refused the invitations that came from that second wife. But when their husband came to either of them, he always brought them much. And he always said to them, "When I bring you food, when I bring you things, always remember to spread your fingers." Now, perhaps the first wife was a little too young, perhaps not mature enough to understand what he was saying. And so when he brought her things, when he brought her food, she shared nothing with anyone. She always ate alone. And after she would have her meal, she would stand and say to the air, "My husband has said to spread my fingers." And she would spread her fingers to the air with a big smile on her face. While the second wife kept her doors open, and when her husband brought her things, if there was no need in her home, she would give them to others. And when he brought food, she always kept those doors open and invited the neighbors to come to have a wonderful meal. And soon those neighbors became friends, and friends can be like family. And in this way, she made community for herself. For by sharing with others, we build community. Now, after a time, that wealthy farmer died. I mean, you think about it. Working as hard as he was, with 2 wives, I'm just saying, he died. But he left his property to those 2 wives, half to one and half to the other. And when the first wife thought about his death, she was sad. But she didn't invite anyone to come and sit with her, and she shared nothing of what he gave to her, so that after a while, her lamps were running out of oil, her larders were not full, and her half of the field was not tended, for no one really knew her, and no one offered to do anything for her or come spend time with her. And what she ate alone. While the second wife was visited by the neighbors who were now like family for her. And they brought her things and they helped her with things, not just in the home, but in her field, so that the plants grew well and the harvest was great. For they knew that that harvest and anything that she could give them would be shared with them. And she sent invitations to the first wife who did not come. She received no invitations from the first wife to visit with her, until one day the first wife thought that she might die if she didn't do something. And so she went from her home on one side of the city to the home of the second wife. And what did she see? Oh, there were people standing around carrying on conversations as if there was a party. There were people in the house who were helping to clean things, to cook things, to prepare things. Some were just carrying on conversation with the second wife. And they were talking about, even though they might not be able to visit the next day, they would send someone to check on her. Someone always checked on her, and someone always helped with those fields. Now, the first wife was amazed, and when she was greeted and welcomed in, she asked the second wife, "How is it that I have been hungry and I have been alone? I cannot light my lamps. The food is almost gone. No one came to visit me. No one brought me anything. But look how many people come into your house, and look how much they have brought you." And the second wife asked her, "Well, when our husband brought you things, what did you do with them?" And the first wife said, "I kept them. I ate them." And the second wife said, "When our husband said to you that you must spread your fingers, what did you do?" And the first wife said, "Well, I did what he said. When I ate and my belly was full, I stood and opened my hands and spread my fingers to the air." And the second wife took a deep breath and did her best not to smile, for this was pitiful. She said, "Well, then the air must bring you things, because you spread your fingers to the air. You did not share with anyone. You did not give to anyone. You did not help anyone. But I always shared what was given to me. It was a blessing. And the same people to whom I gave, they have come, they have helped, they bring me the things that I might need. We share with one another, for we are community." And the first wife survived with deep gratitude to the second wife, because the second wife knew, as do we all, including those who help because of the hurricane, who survive from the hurricane, who rebuild from the hurricane. We all know how to open our hands and our hearts to others and spread wide our fingers. For giving liberates the soul of the giver.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much. What a perfectly chosen and beautifully told story. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. It's like Reverend Warnock in Georgia says, "Put your boots on, Georgia, and get moving." And now it is my joy to introduce someone who you would have heard this past weekend at the After Hours show with the remarkable accordionist, musician, singer, songwriter, Simone Perrin. Kevin Kling will be joining us next. And I must say, if anybody can package wit, wisdom, and oh yeah, it's Kevin Kling. Thank you for being here, Kevin.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for doing this. This is, it feels good to be part of something, being able to help in whatever way we can. The word resiliency is being used every once in a while, and that word can get beat up every once in a while because we've needed it so much the last few years. But I remember looking up the definition, and it means maintaining one's shape is the definition. And I was saying, how do we maintain our shape when it's been compromised? And we do it through family, faith, community. Those are the ones that hold us together while we grow into our new selves, our new shapes. And so these are some stories of resiliency. The first one I want to tell is about my niece. I was at one of her recitals. She was a little, like 5 years old, and she was in one of those Suzuki recitals where they have a little quarter-sized violin, and she was up on stage with 5 other girls, and they were playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And they just started into it when my niece's bow of her violin got caught in the girl's hair next to her. But my niece muscled through the whole song and made it to the end with the little girl's head just going whipping back and forth. And afterwards, everyone said that my niece had what it took to be a professional musician. Sometimes we have to muscle through. I remember being in a hospital. I was in a motorcycle accident. I lost the use of my right arm. I also suffered a brain injury. And I was in the hospital for a couple of months. And one day I'm going down the elevator and a kid gets on. He was about 8 years old. And he said, I hit my head on a fence post and I had to get 8 stitches here. He points to the back of his head and I go, oh yeah, I had to get stitches from here to here, down one arm, down one leg to the floor. And the kid looks at me and says, yeah, but mine really hurt. And that's when I remembered, you can never judge another man's pain. We're all going through something. We're all going through something right now. We always are. So when you see someone, cut them a little slack because you never know what everyone's going through. I remember when I was in that accident, I got home and I had one of those halos that held my head in shape. And my arm was in a sling and I was looking pretty bad. And I got home and I started to realize that my garbage was being taken out every day. My lawn was being mowed. And I knew who was doing it. My neighbor, Ralph. He kind of takes care of our neighborhood. So when I got well enough to say, Ralph, thank you so much. Thank you for doing that with the garbage and mowing the lawn and making sure everything's okay. And Ralph says, I didn't do it. I didn't have anything to do with it. He said, I was gonna, but it was already done before I could get to it. So I thought, I'm going to find out. Who's this Cobra? Who's the one helping me out? And one day I heard my garbage being pulled down the driveway. So I ran out to see who it was. And it was one of Ralph's boys. He had 2 boys. And the other one was helping him. And these 2 boys were taking out my garbage. They'd been mowing my lawn. And they'd never been asked. Ralph, their dad, didn't even know they were doing it. But that's the way they were raised. They were raised to help people. That was just somebody's hurt. This is what you do. And I feel really lucky because I've been surrounded by people that are on this call, people that are that want to know what they can do to help. Because when you're brought up that way, that's just natural. That's just what you do. So this leads me to my final piece that I want to tell you. And this is, okay, I was in college and I wanted to go into the arts. I wanted to go into theater. And partly because the only thing easier than a theater major was a theater minor. So I was in theater and I really loved it though. And when I got done, my dad would send me these letters in the mail to college. Okay, they weren't really letters. They were like pieces of newspaper clippings and magazines with headlines like actor starves to death in New York, or 2% of the actors union employed, and Bob Crane, star of Hogan's Heroes, found stabbed to death in driveway. And he would send me these clippings, and no return address, nothing. Just I knew they were my dad. I knew what he was doing. So when I got out, I thought, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to find a job. So I got a job at this little theater up in northern Minnesota, a summer stock theater called Paul Bunyan Playhouse. And they put on plays like once a week. So we're cranking them out once a week. But one of the unique qualities of Paul Bunyan Playhouse, which I found every theater is the same, they're all haunted. Every theater is haunted. That's why when theaters are left dark at night, they put a ghost light out. It's a light that's on every stage and every theater, and that is for the ghosts that live in that theater, because seriously, every theater is haunted. So this one was one that everyone had seen. Almost all the performers, audience members, the mayor of the town had seen it. In fact, I was on a radio show with the mayor, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get this guy. So on the radio show, I said, hey, Ned, did you see the ghost? And he said, yeah, I did. And then afterwards, I felt bad. I thought, gee, I just got the mayor to admit he'd seen a ghost. And I said, Mayor, I'm really sorry. And he goes, no, actually, you got me more votes than you lost, because more people have seen the ghost than not. And finally, one day I did see the ghost, and he was backstage standing right next to me, wasn't doing anything. But when I turned, there was no one there. And I know that was the ghost. Okay. The theater decides to hire this ghostwriter. He was called a ghostwriter. His name was Gary. He came from the Twin Cities. He came up to this theater, and what he would do is he would sit and he would talk to the ghost. We wouldn't talk to the ghost. He had a spirit on the other side named Betty. He would talk to Betty, and Betty would talk to the ghost. So they set up that night, 3:30 in the morning, and he was going to talk to the ghost. Well, I go to bed because I didn't believe in any of this. Middle of the night, boom, 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 boom. They wake me up, and they bring me down, and they say, Betty and Gary got in a fight. She won't talk to him. She said, but if you're in the room, she'll talk to you, and then Gary will write what she says. And I go, what do I do? They go, just sit there. Gary will hear what she's telling you. So I just sat there, and Gary wrote on this yellow legal pad all these things this Betty was telling him about this ghost. He gets done, and it's this beautiful handwriting. And Gary hadn't even looked down. And he starts reading. The ghost's name was Dave. And Dave was walking home one night, and he was walking past this area of the theater, and a car hit him. He didn't know if it was a drunk driver. He didn't know what, but a car hit him, and his spirit flew from his body. And Gary turned to me and he said, this is very typical. A spirit will fly from a body. He said he flew into the nearest thing he could see, and that was that theater. And he said, I came into this theater. I thought my life was beautiful before, but I couldn't believe it. He goes, I met kings. I saw kings and queens and heroes. And he said, and every once in a while, even normal people, regular people would just burst into song. They couldn't help it. And he said, I didn't know how beautiful life really was. And Gary says, I don't think he knows he's in a theater. And I said, I don't think he does either. I go, don't tell him. And he says, I won't. And then Dave kept talking. And Gary goes, I don't think he knows he's dead. And I said, I don't either. But Dave did say, I know I'm supposed to be somewhere else, and I'll go there when it's time. Or if you tell me to, I'll go. And Gary turned to me, and we had everyone vote, and everyone said no, they wanted Dave to stay. So we all voted, don't, tell him he can stay. And he did. And so Dave stayed in this theater. But when he was talking about the beauty of these stories about people's lives, I started thinking, like what we did just today. We all came into this room. We all came into this space. And we didn't come into the same space. When you're in a theater, you all think you're in the same place. No, you're not. We all come in with different weights of the world, different problems, different things that follow and lead us into these places. And then the lights go down, or a storyteller begins. And the storyteller begins, and all of a sudden, the transporting begins. And in no time, like two wings, the audience and the storyteller keep this belief aloft. And some people are given a much needed laugh. Some people a cry, but all of us at some point know that we're not alone, and that we love, hate, fear, and desire as much as any king or queen or hero that ever lived. And the story and the storyteller is just a reminder of that. I think of my friend Dave. He's a farmer in southern Minnesota. And Dave, like farmers we've been talking about, farmers that are going through things now, he lost most of his land. He just couldn't afford it. And he was on one of those farms that was 100 years old, 100 years in his family. And he had to sell off all of his acreage except for a couple acres. He got a job in town. So now he calls his farm his art, because his work is in town, but his art is farming. And he puts in crops in a couple of acres. Well, one year he plowed up his crops and he planted sunflowers. And his neighbors are going, Dave, why would you even do that? There's no money in sunflowers. And Dave says, because I can't paint like Van Gogh. And I said, Dave, why sunflowers? Though? What do you like about sunflowers? And he said, because during the day, I'll go out in the field. And if you don't know this about sunflowers, their heads follow the sun across the sky. And he says, sometimes I'll stand there the entire day and follow these sunflowers' heads as they go across the sky. And I go, Dave, what do you do when it's cloudy out? What do you do when there's no sun? And he goes, oh, that's even better. He said, that's when they turn and face each other. And when we do gather, I bring who I am to who you are, this herd, this flock, this pack. Each, it's like a constellation with each star bringing a bit of light to the darkness, and each voice another instrument in this silence. But I want to finish with a quick poem, and it's called Tickle Pink, because my mom used to say, when you're in health, your insides are pink. And it goes, sometimes in our pink innocence, we find ourselves composting, we're waiting to grow, or we rush headlong like so many of our ancestors. But it doesn't matter whether you're rushing or composting, one day you will round a corner, you'll blink, and something is missing. A heart, a limb, a promise, a person, and innocence is gone. And now, though channeled through a spectrum, you're on a new path. And some people miss you. Some people cry that you have left it all, but what has happened and cannot be undone. We pay for laughter and we pay to weep. Knowledge is not cheap. To survive, we must return to our senses, sight, sound, and smell, taste, and touch, and let spirit guide us. Spirit is found in breath. With every breath we inhale, we exhale. We inspire, we expire. Every breath holds a possibility of a laugh, a cry, a story, a song. Every conversation, an exchange of spirit. The words flowing bitter or sweet over the tongue. Now, when you're born into loss, you grow from it. But when you have loss later in life, you grow toward it. A slow move to an embrace that holds tight the beauty wrapped in the grotesque. An embrace that becomes a dance, a new dance, a dance of pink. Thanks.
Wow. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you, Kevin. And I just want to say a comment about knowing your audience. I'm pretty sure every person in this room would just absolutely love to spend the afterworld stuck in a theater. That is my goal. Thank you for sharing. Before we bring on our next storyteller, I just wanted to share some thoughts. This last week, it's been a week, it's been longer than a week, but for me, I've started experiencing these posts on Facebook and social media and watching the news on Sunday and just thinking, it's so big. It's so horrible. What can I do? What difference can I make? And it gets overwhelming. And then sometimes we freeze because it's too big and you can't possibly make a difference. And as is a risk that we all run as storytellers, as my thoughts were turning this way, my thoughts turned to a story. I'm sure most of you have heard this before. There's an elder man walking on a beach, and as he's walking along, he notices the millions upon millions of starfish that have washed up on the shore, and the tide has gone out, leaving them there to die. But he keeps walking. There's too many of them. He can't possibly make a difference. But a short time later, he comes to a little girl who is very slowly, laboriously picking up one starfish, carrying it to the water and tenderly placing it in. The old man thinks, she doesn't understand. She's got so many years to learn, but let me save her some time. So he says, you can't help them all. There's no point. And the little girl looks up at him and thinks, he doesn't understand. And she says, I am making a difference to this one. And then she places it gently in the water, and the water takes it. And then she goes back and picks up another starfish and does it again and again. And as the elder man watches, he joins her. And together, they make a difference to some. There is so little that any of us can do in these huge, tragic times. But that little that I am doing is making a difference to somebody. And if you all join me, as you have, as you are, as you will, we all can make a difference. Thank you for the difference that you're making.
Thank you, Jessica. Breathe and breathe. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Northeast Storytelling's executive director, a woman who gets so much done in 10 hours a week and who is a marvelous storyteller as well. Please welcome Katie Knutson.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So as I was thinking about what to tell, I was initially going to be performing in the Story Slam at the National Festival, and that story didn't seem like it was the right one for today. So this is a story because I know that there's a lot of people who are away from home right now, and they are not able to be where they want, either because their home is gone, or it's unsafe to live in there, or they just don't have water or power. And so many of them might appear as strangers in new towns. This is a story from Norway. Once upon a time, in a small town where everyone knew everyone else, a stranger came walking. He had a beat-up old hat, a tattered jacket, and his toes were sticking out through holes in the tips of his shoes. As he walked through town, he smiled and waved at people, tipping his hat. But the people averted their eyes. He looked like a beggar, and they did not want him to ask them for money, or food, or anything. But the man seemed unfazed by this, and he just continued walking through town. Up to the largest house in town. It was a big brick house with white pillars and glorious pink rose bushes in full bloom. He came and grabbed the large knocker and knocked on the door. And a woman answered. It was the mayor's wife. Hello? Oh, what do you want? Good day, ma'am. I'm traveling through town. I need a place to stay for just one night. Well, we don't take beggars here. Go find somewhere else. And she slammed the door in his face. Again, the man seemed unfazed by this. So he continued to walk right back through town to the smallest house. Now, while that first house had been big and beautiful and quiet, this second house, it was small and loud. For you could hear the sound of the children from blocks away. And when he got to that door, he knocked a little more gently, noticing that its hinges were a little crooked. And a child answered. Hello? Oh, Mom, there's a stranger at the door. A woman came to the door. She had long brown hair and kind brown eyes. She looked at him. May I help you? Yes, ma'am. I'm traveling through town. I need a place to stay for just one night. Oh, well, we don't have much, but what we have is yours. Please come in, come in. And she welcomed the man into her house. She introduced him to all of the children who were hard at work. Some were at the stove preparing dinner, others were setting the table, some were sweeping the floor, and all of them seemed to be talking and laughing, some of them singing as they worked. She took the man's hat and jacket and hung them up, and they gave him a place of honor at the table. When dinner was passed, it was 1 pot of beans and 1 loaf of bread. They each had 1 scoop of beans and 1 small piece of bread. But what they lacked in food, they made up for in stories. The children told the man of the games that they would play and the characters who lived in town, and the man told the children of all the places that he had been and the food that he had eaten. Eventually, their souls were full, even if their stomachs growled. And it was time for bed. The children again got up and worked together to clean that kitchen. Others went into the living room. It was a small, modest living space, and they began to open things, trunks and baskets. Before long, the entire room was a big bedroom. The woman looked at the man and said, "You may sleep in my room. I will sleep out here with the children." He walked into her room. It was a small room with 1 tiny mattress made of straw. He lay down on the bed, and although the straw poked him in various places, he managed to fall asleep. The next morning when he woke up, everybody was already awake and hard at work. Some of the children were stirring a pot of porridge on the stovetop. Some of them were working to clean up the last few bits of pillows and blankets from the living room. And the young woman, well, she was hard at work as well, for she was a seamstress. She had taken out her sewing machine, she had her iron, and she was ironing a piece of fabric, the last piece she had. She was going to make that into something that day in hopes to sell it at the market and be able to buy food for her children that night. The man came out, they all welcomed him and asked him if he wanted to join them for breakfast, and he said, "No, thank you, I must be on my way," as he put on his hat and his jacket. The man turned to the woman and said, "I would like to thank you for your generosity and kindness." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pine cone. Now, the woman had been given many pine cones in her life, but it was always by her children. After playing outside, it usually came with sticks or rocks that they found interesting. She had never received a pine cone from an adult. But she held out her hand and she thanked him. He looked at her. "Ah, I see that you do not understand. For you see, this is a magic pine cone, and the first thing you do today will be multiplied by 1,000. "Thank you," she said. She didn't believe much in magic, but she didn't want to be rude. She set the pine cone down, the man showed himself out, and she went back to work. She went to pick up that piece of cloth that she had been ironing. She shook it out, and she brought it down and set it down by her sewing machine. When she went back for her shears, though, there was another piece of cloth that hadn't been there before. Well, now this first one was just a simple white cotton, but this was red silk. She picked it up. It was soft against her skin. She shook it out and she set it down, and when she looked back, there was another piece of cloth. This one, yellow, thick wool. She picked it up and shook it out and laid it down. This happened 1,000 times until their house was filled with cloth. The children wrapped themselves in it and spent the day playing. And in the small town where everyone knew everyone else, it didn't take long for word of this woman's good fortune to spread. Exactly 1 year later, that same man with that beat-up old hat, that tattered jacket, and his toes sticking out through holes in the tips of his shoes, came back into town. Again, he smiled and waved and tipped his hat at everybody. And this time, they knew him. So rather than avoiding them, they said, "Oh, hi, how are you? Welcome back to our town. It's good to see you again. Do you need a place to stay?" But the man again seemed unfazed. He smiled and tipped his hat and waved and continued right through town to that big house with the white pillars and the beautiful pink rose bushes. And he knocked again on the door. Again, the mayor's wife answered. "Hello? Oh, it's you! Welcome back. Do you need a place to stay?" Yes, ma'am, I'm traveling through town. I do need a place to stay for just one night. Well, come in. Come in. You will be treated like a king. And he was. He had a 7-course meal that night with fine food. And that night he spread out on this bed so large that when he stretched his arms and his legs out, he couldn't even reach the edges of it. He slept like a baby. And the next morning when he awoke, the mayor's wife was already hard at work. You see, she had heard the story that everyone else in town had heard too, and she had put out all of her gold coins outside of the man's sight, but where she could go and count them right away as soon as she got that pine cone. And so when the man came down the stairs, putting on his hat and his coat, she looked at him. So, do you want to thank me for anything? Do you have anything for me? Yes, ma'am, I do. As a matter of fact, I would like to thank you for your generosity and kindness. And before he could even finish explaining it to her, she reached out and grabbed it from his hand. Thank you, you can show yourself out, right? And she turned to walk towards those gold coins. And the man again seemed unfazed. He let himself out and continued walking. And the mayor's wife, she began to walk towards those gold coins, past that open window, when there was a little draft that just happened to bring the smell of those roses into the house, and with them just a piece of pollen. She sneezed, not once, not twice, not the customary 3 times, but 1,000 times. By the time she was done, she had collapsed in a pile on the floor, covered with handkerchiefs. Her nose was swollen, her eyes were swollen shut, and she was beginning to scab over around her nose. It didn't take long in this small town for word of this woman's misfortune to spread either. Eventually, in fact, the rumor even got back to the man with the beat-up old hat, the tattered jacket, and his toes sticking out through holes in the tips of his shoes. When he heard the story, he smiled, patted his pocket full of pine cones, and continued on his way to the next town. You're muted.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. What a lovely story. I really enjoyed that, and I liked all the expressions and everything. Really good. Okay, so our next storyteller is Adam Booth, and I had admired him from afar with his musician skills and his storytelling, and then I got to meet him in person at the NSN conference in Seattle and found out not only is he a brilliant storyteller, but he's really fun to be with. So please welcome to our stage, Adam Booth.
Thanks. That's a reputation I like to have. Well, it's really great to be alone together with you all here at this event. And I say that kind of in jest, but storytelling really is, for me, a very lonely occupation because we do so much apart until we're finally together and we get to have that glorious little bit of time together. This has been a really, really hard week for me. And saying that is helping me. I've been saying it all week long, just being very truthful to people about what a difficult week this has been. I went to music school in college, and the one thing that people often said was, if you can do anything else with your life, choose anything else, because music is such a difficult profession to make a living in. And so thankfully, I went to the security of storytelling, in my life, and have had to deal with that ever since. But this week, not to get too pity party, I feel like storytelling, since I'm speaking to a bunch of storytellers, we understand that we're often the first to get cut, and we're often the first to give back, as has been happening here. So it's really nice to get to be together, and I've been listening throughout the afternoon. What has made this week a little more challenging for me is that it's also Rosh Hashanah. The National Storytelling Festival is supposed to coincide with the Jewish New Year this year. And this is a time of the year where we spend time reflecting upon the previous year. We spend time thinking about how we're going to change in the upcoming year and what this upcoming year might look like, and how we might move forward doing things better. And so it's been a really difficult time thinking about, just ending the last year in deep sadness and anger and at times helplessness, and thinking, well, what does that mean for this upcoming year? So every year at Rosh Hashanah, I choose a new book that has a number of readings and teachings in it to guide me through the weeks of the coming year. And I got a new book that I had just started to read the introduction this week, and a little story was in that introduction, and it jumped up and it said, "I think you've been looking for me," which is great because I had no idea what I was going to tell on this concert today. And it's a very, very short story, and so I'm actually going to tell you another story, a precursor story, to contextualize it so that you understand why this story meant so much to me. And it's about Rosh Hashanah. So when I was growing up, I'm from West Virginia, and my Rosh Hashanah experiences were always at my great-grandparents' house. They lived just down the street from me. And Judaism is a religion of the household because Jews are a diasporic people. We're all over the world and have blended local traditions and cultures in with our practices. Even though we have temples and synagogues, really, it's within the household that most of the religion happens. And so my great-grandparents' home was really like my temple growing up, even though I didn't know that at the time. I've only come to recently make this discovery in my own life. We gathered there for all the high holidays, for all of the Jewish holidays, but I want to tell you about Rosh Hashanah in particular. They had a formal dining room in their house, very fancy table, big, heavy, thick wood with very proper chairs that were upholstered. And that room led directly into a very long living room that had perimeter furniture. So there was a big open area so you could see all of the sky blue carpet that they had running through their first floor. And anytime there was a holiday, there were tables and chairs brought from the basement that would stretch from that very formal dining set and table in the dining room down through the living room. And the whole family would gather together. We were squeezed in between that perimeter furniture that was always there. Tables, folding chairs, not quite as nice on this side of the house as on that side of the house. And as different cousins and relatives would show up, there would be probably 30 people in my family that would gather for every holiday. We would say hello, we would hug, we would start to tell stories, we would talk about how hungry we were because we always gathered to eat. And to stave us off, there on those tables were always kosher dill pickles just waiting for you so you could have a little appetizer before the soup was served. And then finally, someone from the kitchen, where there was always a flurry of activity, would come out and say, "All right, guys, take a seat. It's time to eat." And we would sit down. There in the other room, my great-grandparents would sit at the head of the table, and their children and their children's spouses. And then the next generations would kind of spill into the seats all the way to the front of the house. There was kind of like a caste system within my family that I didn't know existed until I started thinking back about it. And as the older members throughout the years died, you kind of got moved up into that dining room. We'd sit and everybody would have an individual soup order taken by some relative that would come out of the kitchen. Do you want one matzo ball or two? Do you want kreplach, noodles, rice? You get your soup and it would come and be set right there in front of you. But before anybody could eat, we had to say grace. And in my family, the tradition was, because sometime long ago, someone had said, we have to say grace. And a jokester said, "Grace," really loudly. And my aunt, whose name was Grace, looked up from what she was doing and said, "What?" And then they said, "It's time to eat." we continued that tradition. So we have to say grace, and someone would call out grace, and my Aunt Grace would jokingly say, what? And we say, it's time to eat, and we would start to eat. The clinking of spoons in our matzo ball soup, and once everybody had had soup, those plates were cleared off, and the meal would come. You would pass it around on big platters. There was brisket, and it had been cooking all day, and so it was very, very dry. And then there was chicken, and it was kosher, so it was very, very oily. And then there were platters of vegetables. The vegetables had all cooked under the brisket, so they were very, very oily, which explained why the brisket was so dry. We had gefilte fish and horseradish, and it just kept getting passed around. And because it was Rosh Hashanah, always sliced apples with honey for a sweet new year. And as we ate, and as we passed the food around, there were stories and stories. And if you were telling a story about someone on the other side of the room, they were quiet stories. But most of the stories were loud and gregarious and filled all those rooms right there, even over to the kitchen. And though I spent years and years celebrating this way, I honestly don't remember almost any of those stories. But I remember all the faces. I remember the food. I remember the feeling of safety. And I have a distinct audio memory of every single relative having a distinct laugh. And I can remember all of those to this day. And that's how we celebrated Rosh Hashanah for 20 years. After the meal was over, we would fold up all of those temporary tables and chairs, and a big parade would start taking them back down to the basement where they would stay for 10 days until Yom Kippur. And we would have a big feast to celebrate the end of that day of fasting. But nobody would leave. We just hang around. Nobody wanted to leave this safe, wonderful space full of love. Until finally it was our turn to go. And after 20 years of celebrating that way, my great-grandmother had died, my great-grandfather had died, my great-aunt inherited that house and continued the traditions until she was too old to do it. And when she died, they sold the house that had been in my family for 80 years, where all those celebrations and memories lived. And now they come back to me every year at Rosh Hashanah when I cook those same recipes. When I sit down at my own dinner table and go to take that first bite of matzo ball soup or have honey cake that was my great-great-grandmother's recipe. All those voices come back, and the faces and the laughter and the sense of security that is right there in the memory of those tastes. And I miss it so much. You know, I would give almost anything to go back to one of those 20 nights from my childhood over the years. And that's what I was thinking of this year when I got the news that we weren't going to be gathering in Jonesboro. This would have been my 19th year going to the National Storytelling Festival. And I just think back about all the storytellers whose stories I've heard, many I don't remember, but I recall their voices. The different storytellers who are no longer there in person, but I remember hearing their voices and their laughter, you know, like Catherine Wyndham, Kevin Locke, and Otondo Zulu, and Doc McConnell, and so many, many more. And that feeling of being together and laughing with people and crying with people, and that sense of safety and security that we have every single year that we didn't get this year. And so I was really, really low until this little story said, I think you've been looking for me. And here's the story. It's a story of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name, the founder of Hasidism. Once, the Baal Shem Tov was helping a community as they were going through their prayers for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the one that's coming up next weekend. And as they were going through all of their prayers, a boy came in to join them. And they could tell by the way that he was dressed that he was just a peasant boy. Surely this boy does not know how to read. And yet he picked up a prayer book and started looking through it. And as much as they wanted to continue focusing on their prayers, they thought, what is he doing? And they looked down. Could he actually read? No, he couldn't. Perhaps he knows all of the prayers by heart. But he didn't. That peasant boy just stared at the prayer book until he lifted it up and said, Hashem, ruler of the universe, here are all of your letters. Arrange them into the words that you want to be said. And the Baal Shem Tov said it was such a profound prayer that it lifted that whole community right up through the gates of repentance. And that was the story that I needed to hear this week. I hope it helps some of you too. Shana Tova, may your new year be healthy, safe, and sweet.
Shana Tova. Adam, thank you for sharing that story. And we did not exactly have a caste system in my family, but we did have the children's table, which I gotta say, that was the place to be. Much better than the adults table. Ugh. Thank you for sharing. I resemble all of your remarks, and I too have been missing being together in community with everyone, but feel so much better having spent my afternoon here with all of you, those of you who are watching, as well as those of you who are sharing your stories. And it has been an honor to spend this time with you. And it is an honor to introduce our final storyteller of the afternoon, Dovie Thomason. She is a featured storyteller in the National Storytelling Festival this weekend in this small little way, but she would have been featured this weekend there, and we are so grateful to have her here. So please welcome our final storyteller of the night, Dovie Thomason.
Thank you. And I especially want to thank Adam, amongst all the tellers who I've gotten to hear today. But for his story giving me permission to do something I don't usually do. I usually, in a situation like this, and often when telling, I only tell about myself in terms of context or background of the story, who it came to me from, and what was the history, the landscape, the roots and grounding of that story. But for the last week, Adam now has given me permission to speak about the last week or two. In the last week or two, I've been in a situation, as so many have, where we saw this coming. Whether we saw it coming knowing we're always watching Florida this time of year, and we have elders and family and friends we're watching it. We saw this coming because we watch the Weather Channel and we have input of news globally constantly. We saw this coming because it is the ammo that is triggered when we've lived through trauma. I thought of being in New Orleans, not just New Orleans, but also in Iberia Parish. I flew out of there 2 days before Katrina, one of the last planes to leave. I'm blessed in that I always seem to be the last plane to leave. The responsibility that comes with that is you're the first one to come back and help. But you don't come back and help always when you want to, because that might just be for you. You come back and help when your help is needed. And so I'm hoping that some of what we've shared today is what is needed at the time it is needed, as your donations are needed, as those who are there on the ground right now. There are those looking for relatives, those who've lost everything. And it reminds me of a woman I met in Avery Island just after Katrina. And she said to me, I saved some photographs and I have 2 cups so I can share. And I thought of her this week, and I guess I'm fortunate I was on the last plane out and I have cups to share. So this is the story that came to me. There was an old beaver grandmother, and she was busy doing what grandmothers do. She was busy. She was swimming about and gathering limbs and chewing up branches and making smaller twigs and knitting them together, fitting them tightly so she could build a dry home beneath the water. And she did not live alone. She was building that home for relatives and family and perhaps friends, all needing a place, for the beaver is not one to think only of herself. So she was busy and had a list in her mind, as grandmothers do, of what must be done before the sun sets, before the cold comes, in case the waters rise. And she was busy when that eagle swirled around, circling and circling the pond below where he had been watching her, and settled on a branch. And he sat there and cocked his head and looked down at her, and she peeked her head up out of the waters, and he said, "You, I'm going to eat you. So you know who takes your life. It is I. And I am the greatest, I am the most superior, I am the finest of all that has been made. I am that one that moves above all others. I am that one, and it is I who will end your days." And she said, "Is that really all you have to do? That's it for you? I heard you speak of yourself maybe a bit too much just there. I will, I shall, I am, I do. I am busy taking care of others. Now, you will excuse me. I have things to do, and you have taken more of my time than you deserve." And she dove beneath the water, and the eagle got fierce. He fletched himself up. He looked about. He watched, his eyes piercing the water where she had disappeared. But eagle, great though he is, doesn't know much about aquatic animals, for a beaver dives in one place and never rises from the waters in the place where she disappeared. She moves through the waters and appears again. And so the beaver came up in another place, and the eagle did not see her until she shook her head and her teeth and said, "Look at you. Doing nothing, doing nothing. I am hungry, and I will hunt when I am ready. I am not here to be told what to do by one like yourself." And she said, "Oh, indeed, I would not dream of telling you what to do. I don't have time to talk to you. I have this river. I must help it move so it moves where it should and helps those who need homes. And then again, we need water caught here in this pond that I am fortifying and readying it. And you just sit there threatening. Oh, goodness, goodness." And then she disappeared under the water, and he started to get fierce. He hissed to himself and cried and did that voice that only an eagle can do when in full hunt. But he did not leave that branch, for he did not know where she was in the waters. He did not know how to strike. She came up again, and she said, "Look at you, starting to get cold up here. You probably need something to eat, and it's not going to be me. You should work for your food instead of, you expect me to come out onto the shore so it's easy for you? No, 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 no. You should get your food and maybe feed someone else. Why don't you help someone else? You could do that, you know. That's what I'm doing. I do not live my life just for myself. No, no, no. There are those relying on me, those whose homes would flood without my help, those who need dry spaces, those who need food. And again, I have given you too much of my time when my attention belongs with those who need me." And she disappeared under the water. And where she went from there, I do not know, nor did the eagle. The eagle sat there as the sun faded from the sky, and the wind began to howl and rip through his feathers, and he fluffed himself up, but he could not warm himself, and he was cold, and he was hungry, but he was the one who was without company and help that night. Thank you.
Thank you, Dovie. Thank you. That was a beautiful way to conclude this program. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who contributed their time today. We include all of our volunteers, but just quickly to thank all of the storytellers from today's program: Ann Rutherford, Donna Washington, Michael Carson from the ISC, Alton Chung, Regina Stoops, Diane Ferlot, Brandon Leake, Lynn Ford, and Lynn and Donna, of course. Happy birthday to both of you. Kevin Kling, Katie Knutson, Adam Booth, and Dovie Thomason. And I'm Jessica Robinson. I'm going to bring up Linda Schuyler Ford, or I guess Claire, you can bring her up, right? And then Claire will join us in a second. Hi, Linda. Muted. Right at the very end, too.
Shut up. I can only repeat what Jessica said. My heart is full. Thank you all so very much for sharing your gifts, your wisdom, your love, and for whomever, your money. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Evan. Thank you to Judy Clapper, who was our YouTube monitor. Thank you, everybody on YouTube, for all your comments. Thank you for everyone who came backstage. It's been really lovely. And thank you for any help you can do at any point to anybody who's been affected by this awful, awful disaster. Now, what we're going to do now, if we can, we're going to try it anyway, is open up the backstage, and we're going to live stream this too. And just anybody's got any questions, feel free. And what we'd like you to do is just put your hand up rather than have everybody unmute and talk at the same time. So if you can put your hand up, and then we'll call. I mean, I think if you put yourself on gallery view, I think we can do that now. And then everyone can just, maybe have a couple of comments. We won't go on 5 or 10 minutes maybe. And then if anybody's got anything particular they'd like to say.
The official program is over, but if anyone wants to hang out and chat, this is your time. No obligation. Dovie? Oh, you're just saying bye-bye. Okay.
Thank you, Dovie. It's lovely to see you in here.
Thank you. Thank you. You're muted.
Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome. What a wonderful sharing of stories. Thank everybody. I'm just sitting here just getting full.
Yes.
Stories.
Thank you all for coming. I'm so sorry that we can't all be meeting together in person, but another day, another time.
There is a request in the chat for links to donate. Could you repost those?
Yes.
Sure. We have been doing it all the way through, but we will do it again. The best thing to do really is to go to Better Said Than Done, to their website, much as I hate you doing that, but obviously go to bettersaidthandone.com. And then if you go to that, we'll put a link in the chat now as well, but all the links are there as well. And if you want to save the chat, they're all in the chat for Zoom, and they'll be saved in the chat in YouTube. And you can go back to the YouTube channel at any point and watch the show for up to a month. So just know that you can do that.
And we, of course, would like you to donate to whatever organization you feel is doing the best work. We selected four that we heard from people in the affected areas who recommended those charities, but there are so many that are doing great work. At bettersaidthandone.org/event, you can go to this event, and all the links are there, but you can donate to whatever organization you want. We wanted to get this done quickly, so we didn't set up a special donation page where we take the money and then we send it out it's just going directly to the organization. So donate to whoever you think is doing the best work in whatever definition you have for that. So thank you, Jane, for your comments.
Gosh, you've all been very polite.
We are very quiet for a group of storytellers.
Everybody's just so full, I'm sure.
It really was just, I mean, we weren't here for that, but it was a fantastic show. So, thank you to all of the storytellers for sharing just truly incredible stories.
Absolutely.
It's very moving. I was moved and I don't often get moved.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, I just want to say I think it's the next best thing to being together in Jonesboro since we can't be there together. It is so wonderful to see everyone's face and to hear these just absolute fantastic stories today. So thank you for organizing it, and thank you all the storytellers for sharing. It's been great.
Thank you, Linda. Oh, it's good to see you right here in my office.
Well, if everyone is quiet, we might then just finish, because I think the storytellers have been very good and been given up over 2 hours of their time. So unless anyone's got a burning desire, I think we'll stop.
Thank you so much to all of you for arranging this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
It was an
Really
absolute
appreciate it.